Estás preocupada?
You ever thought about being an exótico?
They don't let exóticos win. I want to flip it.
Mi voz puede volar.
I find both the films that we're going to talk about this week sort of derivative yet worthwhile entries in their respective subgenres. I think they're kind of kept above average by various well-executed elements. And in the case of Cassandro, these elements would basically be a fantastic leading performance by Gael Garcia Bernal and the woman who plays his mother, Perla de la Rosa. And also because this movie is a really exciting peek into the secretive world of lucha libre wrestling, something that I have no experience with, and so that was fascinating just in and of itself. But I find that this movie has a very strange cadence. Its script often takes the sort of Cliff Notes version of important moments in Cassandro's life, and it plays with the passage of time in really jarring ways. I don't think it's enough to bring the film down, because I think come award season, this film's going to be a shoo-in for foreign language nominee.
And instead of like really getting caught up in the who's its and the what's its and the how's it's just kind of being like, hey, this is happening to somebody. How would they handle it? Kind of in the same way that I guess Jordan Peele did with Nope. But instead of doing what Nope did, which is like make fun of the little green men joke, they're like, no, we want to make little green men scary again. And it kind of does it. You know, to its credit, this movie does kind of do that. But eventually, you know, he just kind of reveals a stunning lack of fresh ideas. It's just the same sort of beats over and over again, the same cycle of, oh no, there's someone getting tractored in. Oh no, there's something creepy walking on its hand feet. Oh, it's green, it's got eyes. And eventually you're like, okay, but why is this happening? And never does this movie ever give a shit about the why. You know, welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode number 26. We've got another streaming double feature for you today as we take on back-to-back featured reviews of Amazon's Cassandro and Hulu's No One Will Save You. One tells the true story of Mexican lucha libre wrestler Saul Armendariz, a pioneering figure of gay acceptance in Mexican culture. Next up, on the complete other side of the spectrum, No One Will Save You is the latest shoestring sci-fi about an agoraphobic's close encounter of the third kind. We'll get to both of those a little bit later, but first we're going to sandwich both of them between the news of the week and the Mentionables, wherein we name our favorite non-film recommendations of this week. You're going to find timestamps in the episode description. Please like, subscribe if you like what you see, and give us a rating on the podcast service of your choice if you like what you hear. But that's the business end of the show. Chuck, I'll turn it over to you. I just want to say, these two movies are less than 2 hours long. I feel like we keep on bringing this up because it's a virtue that is real, that needs to be embraced more, because you know what it provides? Forgiveness. You know, if my movie that I'm watching is 2+ hours
and it makes the same mistakes that these two movies did at times, my feelings towards them would have been way more negative. Like, I just kind of want to point that out, just put that out on Front Street. Like, as long as the writers have, are taking notes and just twiddling their thumbs, consider shorter scripts, because the whole experience is a lot more rewarding when I'm literally not like reaching for my phone just because I want to know how much longer am I going to be trapped here. Like, that's the question that sometimes I'm forced to ask. If you're Christopher Nolan, I don't ask that question, but sometimes, like maybe for a shoestring budget sci-fi movie, I would be asking those questions. But speaking of Nolan, there are two of his buddies, his peers, that are just like full on filleting him right now. Basically saying that, like, no, it's not Greta Gerwig that's saving cinema. It's fucking Oppenheimer. He's making us go to these 70 millimeter IMAX screenings. It's bringing in so much money, and it's because he's so awesome and so great. Are these guys just all part of the same club, or, are they just recognizing the game that Chris Nolan has? Like, do they wish they were making movies like him, basically? More so than they are?
Yeah, well, so what Chuck is talking about here is Denis Villeneuve and Paul Thomas Anderson both basically said that, Oppenheimer's saving cinema, and I think the exact words that PTA used was it's nature's way of healing, that it got all this money. But I think in Villeneuve's case, it's a bit of a salesman's pitch going on here, because Denis Villeneuve is one of the few guys that, like Nolan, he makes these like multi-$100 million movies, and he has sort of the four quadrants pegged, because he has the artistic side where people watch a Villeneuve movie and all the film buffs go gaga, and then the general public also watches his movies and they love them too, the spectacle of them. So he really, he is sort of the Christopher Nolan in training, and there's a bit of a salesman's pitch going on where he's like, yeah, IMAX is the future because I filmed Dune 2 in IMAX. And so I think that's kind of what's going on there with his comments.
He's like, yeah, I'll see you guys in March.
Yep.
Don't forget about the fact that this movie should have been out this year. God, I'm still bitter about that. Because that's the other thing. Because, PTA doesn't do IMAX, but he does do 70 millimeter. I remember when The Master came out. That was the big selling point. And then I saw it in, like, the side, like, pocket theater at the Fargo Theater at the time. I wish I could have seen that movie as it was intended to be seen. But I guess it's kind of the point that they're getting at here. It's like, it's not watching it on your home theater. It's not just watching it in your normal multiplex. If you got an artist, and a technician, like, working towards providing you images that should be projected on an IMAX size screen, maybe you should see it that way.
Yeah, if you can find one, because the unfortunate thing is these days, I think there's something like 12 actual IMAX screens in the country now.
What?
Because everything else. So if people don't know, AMC theaters sort of bought up like the naming rights to IMAX, and that's what they call like their premium format theaters. Like, Marcus Theaters calls it the Ultra Screen.
Yeah.
And Man Theaters, which is like a regional theater chain, they call their big screens the XDX screen. And so IMAX has basically become shorthand for AMC's large format.
I have no idea.
Yeah, so people, if you go to an AMC theater and it says IMAX, the sort of shorthand that people have come up with that term for is Limax, because it's a lie. It's basically so.
This is the first time hearing about it. Like, this is like blowing my mind that such a fraud could be perpetuated upon the populace like this.
Yeah, it is kind of annoying, because there are, the only true IMAX screens in the country are mostly situated in the big cities. I know that we went to one when we were in New York, the one at the Lincoln, or where was that? The AMC that is in New York, the one that we went to when we were there. That is one of the few actual IMAX screens
where we saw Blade Runner 2049, as it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so. But then, yeah, the rest of them are kind of peppered throughout the country, you know, like LA, Dallas, Miami, you know, places like that. And so
doesn't Minneapolis have one? Like an actual?
We used to. No,
okay.
We used to. Yeah, it of all places, it used to be at the zoo, the Minnesota Zoo of all places.
And that's where I saw my only IMAX movie in my life, was at the Minnesota Zoo. It was a Savannah film. So you like it was really intense. You watched water buffalo getting killed by lions.
Oh god, yeah. I saw a couple movies there when it was still open, including Dunkirk, and that was an experience. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting that PTA makes the point in his quote here that he knows people that drove from like El Paso to Dallas to watch Oppenheimer in IMAX film stock, which is like an 18-hour round trip. And so I think that, you know, unfortunately, going to the theater is not enough of a difference for people than if they have a good like theater system at home. But I do think that going to an IMAX theater is enough of a difference for a lot of people. So they will, I mean, when Villeneuve says like IMAX is the future of, you know, theatrical film going, I think that he may have a point there where, you know, there's such a huge, you know, valley of quality between going to an IMAX screen and then just watching a movie at home, even if you have like a 70 or an 80-inch television.
Yeah, and it just circles back to what the great prophets of doom, Spielberg and Lucas, you know, kind of said like maybe like 15 years ago now, where they were based like this is how we get there. You know, the industry made it really easy and convenient and preferable to watch movies at home, and then they're basically going to make like true cinema filmmakers only work in one format. So is that going to create like a weird class system? It's like you either are the arcane wizards who know how to use the IMAX format and are allowed to make movies in that format for that venue, or you're just the plebe making stuff for streaming.
Oh yes, I mean certainly I could see that definitely happening. You know, where you know, theaters go, they become something more antiquated, and you know, there's less and less of them. And the ones that survive are the ones that sort of double down on like the premium experience. And so, yeah, I could see a future where, you know, we're watching movies like comedy movies and horror movies and indie drama movies. We're watching those types of movies at home. And then the only movies that we're going out to the theaters for are blockbusters and action movies and like, you know, couple $100 million, you know, Ridley Scott period pieces like Napoleon and, you know, stuff like that.
You know, it's already kind of happening because like we've already been kind of trained to do that just because they stopped making things like thrillers and comedies for cinema. Yeah, no, like we watch the reruns at home and then the things they occasionally shit out, you know, that they really don't feel good about. Like when the guys like the what do you call them, the workaholics boys, when they can't even like really get any traction or, you know, get anywhere with their projects anymore, you know, we're in trouble. That though to be fair, I did see that fucking movie they made and it was terrible. So maybe the problem might be quality, you know, because that's kind of been what, you know, supposedly makes things rise or fall. Are people actually watching it? It's the question that drives the writer's strike right now. God, did you watch that totally asinine conversation between Bill Maher and the comedian, the Hot Pockets guy? I can't think of his name.
No, I didn't. No.
Well, I don't know. They were getting into it basically about the central question, which is, you know, it's like Maher saying, hey, you guys are acting like you're owed a living in the same way that, you know, like a blue collar worker or an essential worker is. It's like, you guys are like getting an awesome deal having your career be writing something. You know, it's like, you're like, why are you acting like you deserve? Like, basically, he's like, this is an elective way to live. It should not be a like guaranteed way to live. So like, you should be writing the best shit, and you should be succeeding that way. You know, because and I forget the comedian's name, but he's one of those doughy, boomer like Louis C.K. era guys who I've forgotten about completely because I don't watch anything on Amazon except for one of the shows we watched today. But what I'm getting at is that this show that we were watching for a while here, that I was actually getting kind of settled into as it was trying to find itself in its second season, was Winning Time. And under the Zaslav era of Warner Brothers Discovery, you really got to deliver. And when you're given 7 fucking episodes to deliver a rating expectations from a murderous fuck like that guy, you better do it. And what was your reaction? Did you like watch the finale and find out it was canceled, or did you find out that the show was canceled before? Because I'm the latter there. I read the headlines the morning of and realized, oh, I guess I should have watched the episode last night.
Yeah, I was kind of the same. I mean, I had found out that it was canceled because basically what HBO did here was they canceled the show like the minute the episode went up to watch, because
they already knew they were done. Okay.
Yeah, like people would have found out, and because it was very, very weird how the ending played out, but yeah, basically the viewership for Winning Time has sort of struggled a bit in the second season, or it's sort of been waning. And I believe that this is HBO's most expensive show behind House of the Dragon, so it obviously couldn't stand up to those numbers. And basically on finale night, HBO, they, of all things, they tweeted out like, this will be the last episode of Winning Time, it's been a great ride, whatever. And so it ended the show on a very weird note.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, what did you think of that, the way it ended?
It's just a sign of the times. In another era, they would have just made the show like the season that they intended, and the decision to cancel it would have come, with the cliffhanger, with that solid hook of, oh shit, it's the revenge arc. This is where like the Lakers really, because I know the history, I know what's coming. They've set up this awesome villain in the Celtics, and here was the time where it was like it could have gone either way. This could have been Larry Bird's decade, or it could have been Magic's, and we're gonna finally find out why these guys were so great. And they've set it up perfectly, I thought. And then they take us to that really dumb stinger that they knew they had to make because they was telegraphed very early on that they were not coming back. To them internally, so they knew they had to, record that dumb little scene between the fucking buses, on the floor of the forum, and then the tritest, most worthless little bit of like slideshow. It was embarrassing. Like it's a meme. It's gonna be a meme because it's ridiculous what they did to this show. Because I concede the season really was really low at times, low energy, and I don't know what you attribute that to. Whether it's the decision that I liked, which was accelerating the timeline and just like or at least telescoping it, condensing things, so that we get further faster, and they stop wasting time with like dumb things. But they still wasted time with dumb things. I do not care about Magic and Cookie getting together, especially since they were like totally setting them up to break up. Because the truth is, they didn't get together until like literally right before his HIV diagnosis, whatever.
That's right.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of things happening here that normally would be perfect for a show that was a tweener that like could have been great, that really didn't get a chance and was canceled, but then they gave us too much of a completion. They should have had the balls to be like, no, we're taking this to Hulu. Fuck you. We're not done. And instead they pussied out. I know it's an expensive show, and and HBO really wasn't getting a lot out of it that they wanted. But I mean, this season cut down on all the needless sex and like nudity in a major way, which I appreciated, because it became more about all the crackling personalities and everything. I even liked all the attention that they gave the Celtics and Bird. Like that like, yeah, at times it worked really well, but then I don't know. I understand why this was canceled, but it's really bizarre how it happened.
Yeah, there was a couple of highlight sort of standout moments of the season. I did really like the Larry Bird episode where you got his sort of backstory. And then I did the best episode of the entire show, in my opinion. Like season 1 and 2 is in this season, and it's episode 5, the episode where Paul Westhead gets fired.
Yes,
that was fantastic, and that episode had multiple standout moments between that and then when Magic goes into Jerry Buss's office and basically screams at him. Those were two really standout scenes, and so yeah, that was a really great episode. But yeah, like you said, there was a lot of sort of down, low energy to this season a lot of the times, and yeah, the actual ending for the show, I mean, other than the shitty slideshow and stuff, it's just such a weird note because, I mean, I guess spoilers for real life here if people care, but the Lakers lose the championship to the Celtics, and then Jerry Buss is in the middle of divorce proceedings with his wife, and the literal last shot of the show, if you don't count the stupid tacked on scene, is Magic Johnson still an immature brat crying in the shower, sitting in the shower crying, and that's the last shot of the show if you don't count the other stuff, and so yeah, very odd, and I'm still glad we got the second season, of course, but it is a shame that they couldn't shop this somewhere else, but it's definitely not going to happen now because of the way they ended it, but it wouldn't happen anyways because of how expensive the show is.
Exactly. It would take Apple being we will pay for all of this. We don't care. We have money coming out of our ears. But I'm
just kind of curious, if had this show gotten let's say a third season, and the third season would have been the end, where do you think the show would have ended, timeline wise, or what do you think the ending scenes of the show would have been had it gotten more seasons?
Let's say it got 2 more seasons. Because we have season 3 for them to just be utter cunts and be dominant, and just really push the Celtics shit in, because that's what happened. They met maybe 2 more times in the finals after this, and the Lakers won both of those. And the Celtics didn't win another title against the Lakers until KG and Paul Pierce many years later. So what I think, you get that third season where they're just the fucking king shit. They're the best. Showtime is really at its peak. The NBA is blowing up. You got Michael Jordan showing up in the show. Finally, you could really have some fun with it. And then you get something really rad in the 4th season, which is the fall, the decline. You see them lose one last title against the Pistons, and then you watch the bad boys run roughshod over them the next year, and then they don't sniff. They get one more shot at a title, and it's against Michael Jordan. So you see Magic finally just get humbled and and sent and downgraded. He's no longer the top dog. It's this kid, this other guy. And so and then you see him become human again, and then you finally get that resolution with Cookies, in his relationship, and then we come full circle to that moment where he gets diagnosed, and then you see the announcement, and then you see him at the Olympics, and then you end the show. Okay,
I think that's totally fair. I think that's probably the course they would have taken. I would have loved to have seen as sort of the stinger scene of the show, if it were to get 4 seasons or something.
Yeah,
I would like to see it in an introduction of Kobe Bryant. That would be sort of the
set the scene for volume 2. Yeah,
set the seed for yes, the Lakers are down, but they're gonna come back, and then they sort of introduce a young Kobe Bryant in the very last scene of the last season.
Oh no, you totally could do that. You
Yeah.
could even take it to the first All-Star game, and this is a moment from The Last Dance. It's the last All-Star game for Jordan. It's the first All-Star game for Bryant, and Magic is doing commentary. Or like or maybe he's coaching. I forget which it is, but either way, he's present for that. So you could set that up, and he would have been coaching Kobe. Because for a while there, he became an owner of the team. I think he eventually sold his stake. So as soon as he got AIDS, him and Bus's relationship became even more important, and he became even more taken care of. Like, he was paid his salary, the infamous salary from this season, all the way up until it was finally done. And they also gave him equity in the team and all kinds of, and I think he coached for a second, and then he kind of hung around. You could do a lot of different things. He was an executive when during the Kobe Bryant years, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, I don't know. There was a lot they could have done, either with like a volume 2 with the Shaq Kobe era, like really get into it, make the show about Kobe. You're telling me people wouldn't fucking watch that? And I think that's the short-sightedness of the Zaslav era of HBO. Yeah, this thing was an uneven product, but you blame that on the people running it, and you're telling me HBO is so precious now that they can't fire a showrunner and backseat them to be executive producer and get someone else on the credits who knows what they're doing? Because in the right hands, this could have been, one of the great shows, but it never quite found the balance between the behind the scenes stuff that was interesting, the actual basketball NBA stuff that was interesting, and the interpersonal stuff that was interesting. Because you wound up with a lot of, a hodgepodge where only some of it was really something I cared about, episode to episode, and otherwise I just didn't give a shit. It's a hard thing to do, man. But unfortunately, this wasn't the perfect thing that everyone thought it was.
Yeah, still worth watching though. I would say if people, for some reason, somebody hasn't seen it and they're listening to this, definitely still worth watching.
Yeah, just one last note. I just want to point this out. It's a part of, I think, a reason why people stopped watching this show is because it was a Homer show. It was too much up the ass of the Lakers. It's too much from the Lakers' perspective. So you had to be some lame, Hollywood, New York, LA guy who only likes, the teams that are from the towns that they work in. You know what I mean? You couldn't be a Boston person and watch the show and take it seriously because it was just too rooted in a perspective that revised history in a way in this last season that was actually kind of offensive. Because because of how badly Magic screwed the pooch in the series with Boston, he was called Tragic Johnson, and they never actually made it clear that he was the reason why they were fucking losing. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's my beef. We need more objectivity. It wasn't just because the Celtics turned the fucking boiler on in the middle of summer or some shit. Now it's time to go to our double feature reviews this week. The first up is Cassandro from Roger Ross Williams. Matt, take it away.
Yeah, so Cassandro from Amazon Prime. I guess I'll start by saying I find both the films that we're going to talk about this week sort of derivative yet worthwhile entries in their respective subgenres. I think they're kind of kept above average by various well-executed elements. And in the case of Cassandro, these elements would basically be a fantastic leading performance by Gael Garcia Bernal and the woman who plays his mother, Perla de la Rosa. And also because this movie is a really exciting peek into the secretive world of lucha libre wrestling, something that I have no experience with, and so that was fascinating just in and of itself. But I find that this movie has a very strange cadence. Its script often takes the sort of Cliff Notes version of important moments in Cassandro's life and it plays with the passage of time in really jarring ways. I don't think it's enough to bring the film down, because I think come award season, this film's going to be a shoo-in for foreign language nomination. But that's kind of where I'll leave it to start. But yeah, Chuck, what did you think of Cassandro?
I thought it delightful. You know, unlike a lot, we've watched a lot of biopics, and I guess I just appreciate like one like this that is, you know, more interested in like what is it like textually like not that like texturally like to like live this life, to like, you know, like what is the like what is actually going on inside the heart and mind of this person, what is driving them. And yeah, a lot of what drives really successful people, or at least, you know, big dreamers and people who reach for strivers, is an absence or like some sort of trauma in their lives. And usually I just roll my eyes whenever we get to the big moment where everything, you know, it comes together and they still succeed anyway in spite of it all. And it just seems like, you know, the hokiness of it. But the charm of this movie, and I guess the heart of it, is that this person never quite undamages themselves. You know, even up to the moment that they're on, you know, TV with the Hijo Santo, you know, talking about, you know, his life and career and everything, you still just see, you know, like, you know, someone who is damaged. And more often a biopic will lead you to believe that this, you know, person that you just saw go through all this hardship is now perfect and fine and everything's rosy. But you don't get that impression with Cassandro, because yeah, the person is still walking around with all their sadness, even as they're putting on their mask and performing. So there's an honesty to this movie that you don't often get. I agree with you, it's a little narratively uneven. It is kind of strange how events, you know, flow, and you almost have to just like embrace the idea that, yeah, we're not getting a beat by beat accurate accounting like Hands of Stone, which was that movie about the boxer. I can't remember his name now, but I used to know it. It used to matter to me. That was a good movie. It had Robert De Niro in it and everything, but, you know, Ana de Armas plays his sexy love interest. But in the end, that movie doesn't really leave much of an impact. This movie does. It really gets you into the heart of it, and I appreciated it, you know, a great deal. And I really liked the cinematography. I just want to call that out right now. The aspect ratio serves it, because is it creating the impression that you're watching on a old CRT TV in like some, you know, favela somewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it makes it it seemed like old Mexican TV, and it helps too that all of the wrestling stuff was really well like choreographed. It actually, you know, a lot of it looks real. A lot of times you can tell it's actually Gael Garcia Bernal like doing the flips and stuff. And so yeah. I thought that was wild, that because he's not like a spring chicken anymore. He's in his, I think, late 40s. And so, yeah, you could just tell that he was actually doing all the wrestling stuff and a lot. Yeah. So one of the things I did want to touch on that I sort of mentioned in my introduction is the relationship between Cassandro and his mom. And that's probably the highlight for me of the film. You know, they have such a unique bond, as far as it's a mother-son bond, but it's also almost like a, you know, a friend type thing, because, you know, they're doing like these weird things like swimming in like other people's pools, or like talking about like cum towels that they do like the laundry service for. And I don't know, it's a very like grounded parent-child dynamic still, but like when she embarrasses him, like when they're in the Mexican restaurant and the other wrestlers there and stuff like that, but it's still there's a unique sort of friendship vibe there too.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I guess it's one of the underlining themes, I guess, is the prison of grief and loneliness that she's kind of trapping him in, and the cycles that, you know, she's, you know, giving him, the generational stuff, trauma and you know, and disorder, you know, is definitely a theme of the movie. But like you kind of alluded to in the notes, the movie never condemns him for falling into his vices or his poor decisions, because he's still kind of just free and like still like just like being himself, which I guess is like the ultimate message of the movie, if there is one. It's the legacy of one person who unabashedly just kind of became who they were. The scene where he and his lover are in bed together, and his lover's like, dude, I liked you better when you had the mask on and you were just the little mole guy, that I would bottom for me. But now he's more macho, even though he's the overtly like gay and cross-dressing one, the ambiguous one, the more like morally complicated one. He's more authentically him, and is more like of a man than he was before. The transformation's interesting.
It is, yeah. It is really interesting, and yeah, it's also you mentioned his lover, the other wrestler, right? That's who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did want to sort of touch on, one of the weaknesses of the film.
November, put that down. I'm sorry, dude.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. One of the weaknesses of the film, in my opinion, is this film, I think, either suffered in the editing room or they cut a lot of either unfilmed scene or filmed scenes, and many of the characters sort of got like short shrift in that respect. Like his trainer is just kind of there. The promoter too. I mean, the promoter gets a little bit of sort of interesting stuff to work with because he does like you had pointed out, he's sort of a grifter where he just moves from one guy to the next. But I think the person who gets the most sort of the worst hand dealt is the character played by the musician Bad Bunny, where you can tell that there was scenes filmed with him that aren't in the movie at all. And it's just he's just a weird character because they hint at something there between him and Cassandro, but it never really culminates in anything. And that's sort of where the audience is sort of left to fill in the gaps in certain milestones in his life. And it's just very quick how he goes from nobody to superstar also. And so that is where the film's weakness is, in my opinion. It just, there's not enough there, there's not enough connective tissue between a lot of the scenes.
It did just kind of bleed and and flow from one thing to another, because it is just coasting on the feel good nature of the story. But yeah, but whenever they get into the wrestling, you're just centered there. Like it has an immediacy like Raging Bull whenever they're in the ring and the camera's just like swooping in and stuff. Like it's surprisingly like a lot of effort like goes into this. What did you know about the filmmaker behind this? Are you aware that this is his first feature?
Yeah, I looked into it a little bit. He's mostly done like documentaries, right? I believe, and very like social conscious type documentaries.
So it's a strange fit just in that in that respect, because he's just a black dude with pineapple dreads. But I guess I don't really know much about him beyond that. But like I remember watching the Oscar telecast when he won.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally.
And that's where like it rang some bells, and I was like, oh shoot, okay. And because you wonder if like what drew him to this story. I guess beyond probably just the civil, I guess the social like rights aspect of it, the changing of attitudes and everything. Because like, what did you make of the blatant homophobia, and how it's portrayed?
I mean, I don't think it's too, sometimes with, stuff like that, movies can get a little cartoony, but I don't think for the time period and the place this movie is, which is, at the time, it would have been the late 80s, right?
Yeah, maybe early 90s by the end of it. Yeah.
And then to be in Mexico in the 80s was not a very, friendly place for homosexuals, and I don't think it's too cartoony that there are dudes like in this match that's literally in like an auto shop. I don't think it's too cartoony that there are literal dudes yelling, the F slur at the ring. But yeah, it was pretty striking. I mean, it's definitely a lot different. I mean, homophobia is definitely more concealed nowadays. There's definitely less overt, but it was strange.
Because that's the thing. You need what, honey? Yeah, sorry, guys. That was the thing about it. It's like because it was so present, even all the way up to the end. But by the end, the words literally have no power, and they almost take them out of the soundtrack, even though you can tell that that's what they're saying. They don't. November, leave the door shut, please.
Yeah, they don't put them in. They don't say them anymore. They don't put them in the audio track.
The mix doesn't capture it, because it's almost just a part of it. Like in Brazilian MMA, when someone who's not Brazilian is coming out to fight a local guy, you chant, "Kill him, kill him, kill him." Because it's just what these cultures kind of do. It's like it's like a soccer hooligan doing whatever, like a song that they do before a match over there. The homophobia is just a part of it. Like the Exotico is there for you to hurl your invective at. It's like they're almost like the sponge for all of their bigotry, so that acceptance can come out of it. And like that's an interesting cultural feature and role of the, because what were the other positions, like the other styles? Like I didn't really catch all of them. I guess like there's
Rudo, Exotico, Rudo, and Technico. And basically the other two, the Technico and Rudo, are essentially what the American versions of like the hero and then like the heel, I guess, is what they would be in American wrestling. They're like the bad guy. Rudo is like the bad guy. And yeah, that's one of the fascinating things about this whole Lucha Libre world, is that I just find it completely enthralling because, number one, it's so secretive. I think that in Lucha Libre, unlike like WWE in America, they still sort of keep up the appearance that everything is real. They're not like WWE is like, it's fake, it's all fake. Yeah, whatever. I mean, we're still like athletes, and it still is a tremendous toll on our bodies. But Lucha Libre, they still sort of keep up appearances in that respect. And I find that fascinating. And like the whole thing about wearing the mask all the time, like the Son of the Saint, like never took his mask off, and his father like never took his mask off.
The only time that his father ever did was like a week before he died. He went on some Mexican talk show, took his mask off for the first time in public ever, and he was just like, goodbye. And then he died like a week later.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And yeah, it's just a fascinating world. And like I one of my like favorite scenes in this film is the talk show that the Son of the Saint had, because it reminded me of how much of like a surreal nightmare Mexican television is, between like wrestlers having talk shows and like telenovelas and like weather women who are just there to be like eye candy and stuff like that. It's just, Mexican television is absolutely bonkers if you've ever seen any, like for any extended period of time.
There was a really cool documentary that I can't remember the name of anymore, but it was about an astrologer and like tarot reading person that had like a show like every week. That's the world, man. Anything fucking goes. And I guess that's the joy and the beauty of it. And is for a movie about wrestling, it actually made, like, even though the wrestling looks so hokey, and what I appreciated though is that like they showed the dance that happens where like they're talking to each other back and forth, because that's how it actually happens. It's like they're like, I think you alluded to that when you were talking about wrestlers last week. But yeah, there was just an authenticity to this all the way through it, and yeah, good one, a really good one.
Yeah, definitely Definitely worth watching. Yeah, seek it out. It's on Prime now.
This next one is part of Disney's shovelware campaign, and they're, because, like, as has been pointed out, 20th Century Fox, post the sale, has just been treated dismally, with disdain by the company that paid billions of dollars to acquire it. They're just like, oh, this? Why do I have this? Why do I need this? And that results in movies like Prey and this movie, No One Can Save You, winding up, on Hulu and Disney, and if you're in some other country like India, it's on Disney Star Plus or something. But it's coming to us from a guy who is pretty well established. Blanking on his name, as I said, Brian Duffield. He had done a few different movies, written a few screenplays. I haven't seen everything he's ever been involved in, but in this instance, it feels like someone walked up to him and said, okay, kid, I need a script tomorrow, and I need it to be like Signs and Midsummer, make it happen. And he just handed in a beat sheet. If you're unfamiliar in the industry, it's where you just kind of like write out the bullet points of your story. It's just bullet points. It's like nothing really concrete, nothing really fleshed out, the barest of bones of what it becomes a movie. And instead of this producer who was obviously gacked out on something, just like, looking at it and being like, hey, where's the rest of it? He went and like got a director, hired the guy, and said, okay, make this. So we get a really experimental alien abduction movie in that it's questionable whether or not this is a gimmick or if it, if it succeeds or not. But there's like no meaningful dialogue in this film. It serves multiple purposes, but the end result is something that I'm not quite sure that I'm satisfied with. Because on the one hand, it takes a lot of chutzpah to do that, to be like, oh, I'm going to be such like a skilled storyteller and filmmaker that I'm not even going to need people to say words for you to get it. This is basically a silent film, even though it's not shot and presented as one. That's kind of what's going on. But you have to wonder how much of like that is reflected. Like, are they just trying to say something about modern society, how people don't interact anymore? Are they trying to say how like they're just about isolation? Like, or, were they just trying to be cute? Or is it because everyone is a pod person with a spiny tendril alien thing in their brain? Like which is it? And instead of like really getting caught up in the who's it's and the what's it's and the how's it's just kind of being like, hey, this is happening to somebody. How would they handle it? Kind of in the same way that I guess Jordan Peele did with Nope. But instead of doing what Nope did, which is like make fun of the little green men joke, they're like, no, we want to make little green men scary again. And it kind of does it. To its credit, this movie does kind of do that. But eventually, he just kind of reveals a stunning lack of fresh ideas. It's just the same sort of beats over and over again, the same cycle of, oh no, there's someone getting tractored in. Oh no, there's something creepy walking on its hand feet. Oh, it's green, it's got eyes. And eventually you're like, okay, but why is this happening? And never does this movie ever give a shit about the why. To an extent that I kind of took issue with it. Because you can enjoy it, for like what it is, which is like a fucking nightmare, like nightmare fuel, but it goes beyond the night. I almost wish that it had just been a single night as opposed to like this like 2 or 3 day long experience that she has. It tried to have too much scope,
Yeah.
It should have been simpler. It should have just kind of hung on to what was working for it. It tried to be too big without actually building a foundation for all the stuff it was like throwing up with. So it's uneven, but I still think people should watch it. Like I was not mad at it until I guess the very, very end where I was like, wait, what? You're doing what now? Where it's like literally they just do the Midsummer thing where they're like, oh, now isn't it fucked up how now she's finally happy and now everything's cool again? Like she's Danny from Midsummer. I was like, Ari Aster did this already, dude. Like you could have done anything with your movie, and you go with that. I mean, there should have been more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I largely agree. I don't know if I have that much like specifically that I can complain about with this movie.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of very derivative. And like the one thing I do think that the no dialogue thing is after a certain point, it is absolutely a gimmick. I think it is cool up until a certain point, and that's basically when she is by herself at her house, because it's sort of, once you notice that it's there, if you don't already know about it going into the film, once you notice there has been no dialogue for 15 20 minutes, you sort of realize like, oh, this woman is so isolated. Her job that she does is so isolating. She's an agoraphobe. She's shunned by the community that she has no reason to say anything. Like she just doesn't say anything because there's no one to talk to. Her parents are dead, I'm assuming. She has no friends. The town doesn't like her. But then once it gets to the point where she goes to town and nobody's talking to her, and even when she goes into the police station and sees the parents of her friend that she killed, it's so hammy. It's so like, it's so artificial in its way that it's doing the no dialogue, because it's like, of course these people would be saying things to each other, even if it was just like a fuck you killed my daughter or something like that. It's just, I after a certain point, I really didn't like that. I thought it was so gimmicky.
There had to be someone she could talk to. There had to be somebody who she could be like, yo, is this happening to you as well? But like every person that she could have done that with, I guess, was either already turned or dead or something. But yeah, like let's talk about the aliens a little bit, because we kind of have to. My thought wasn't that there was different kinds of aliens. I just thought that the aliens could change their appearance and like the length of their limbs as needed. Like I liked the idea of them being extra dimensional beings that just, like whatever, like the way that that there was one shot where like it like jittered around like all mechanically, like it like it didn't understand how to move fluidly, and like the stuff like that was really great. But then I don't know, like at the same time, was it really just an alien family? Because there was like a baby alien at one point.
Well, what I was hoping would happen is I was really, really hoping, because you find after she kills the first one, we find out that these aliens have some sort of like spiny creature inside of them that is basically like a telekinetic, like mind control parasite. And I thought at that point, when we figured that out, I thought the movie was going to be like, no, this is it's like Independence Day. This is the actual alien, this little thing. And what this alien has done is it's gone to all these different worlds and like enslaved different types of aliens.
Like the Yeerks and Animorphs.
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought at that point we were going to get like multiple different species that were going to show up at her house. They weren't all just going to look the same. But no, they didn't go that route. And
the cabin in the woods, routine.
Yeah, because that would have been so cool if, the actual aliens were these little parasites, and they had sort of enslaved all these different planets before coming to Earth, and they were bringing all of their sort of hosts to Earth to enslave Earth. But no, we just get these grays that have differently length arms and legs and stuff. And I don't know, that was so weird. It was so like, especially because it wasn't explained. And they seem to sort of communicate. The smaller one, like the baby one that's in her house, like tries to communicate with her at some point with like a weird like sign language that it's doing with like its arms. And that was very, very odd, because it still seemed like it was going after her. But I don't know, I guess I also thought there would be a point in the film where like one of the aliens would somehow break through to her, that it's not trying to kill her, it's trying to like warn her of something. But that never happened either. There wasn't like a good alien that was like just trying. They were all just trying to kill her basically.
Yeah, and I guess that's what was frustrating. Like the motivations of your aliens, if they're grays or greens or whatever. Like if you've seen Fire in the Sky.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, see, like terrifying, but in that their motivations are just so fucked up it's inexplicable. And that's part of the horror of it. And in this one it's like, no, they had a very deliberate plan, and if it's just pod peopling the population so that they can more easily take over the planet, I guess why do they want our planet? In Independence Day, it's because they wanted our water. Like that's what it boiled down to for them. So and I guess in Signs it was the opposite. But I guess the I don't know, is which movie I guess is more complete? They like Signs or this? They both kind of make the same creative choices. The aliens are just green and are just for some reason doing what they're doing. But which one delivers more satisfying?
I would probably say Signs, because it is, this movie really leaves a lot of questions hanging. And I do think, that is probably by design, but I don't think it's necessarily means that it's satisfying. And so, yeah, I do think Signs is probably the more complete movie. But I did like, the one thing I will say about the aliens in this is, Grey's, choosing to portray them as just grays, like classic grays, I think is the right choice, was the correct choice, because there's something not only disturbingly humanistic about grays, but I think that at this point in Western civilization, we have like grown up to like fear them, whether that be because of their presence in pop culture or because of like historical, like alien encounters. We grow up as kids, seeing pictures of these things and seeing them in shows and movies and documentaries. And so, yeah, we grow up fearing these grays. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
The X-Files basically programmed that fear into me from a young age.
Yeah.
and that's like the opening thrust of this movie was so effective for fucking me up. Because of the, like, I don't know, the cat and mouse game as she's like trying to hide from it in the house. And eventually, yeah, like when she kills it, it shocked me. Like I didn't expect that to happen. I was like, oh, okay, well now what? And the now what, is kind of all over the place. Because like what did you actually understand what was going on between her and her friend that whole time, even like when they explain it? Because I almost it didn't register for me exactly what was happening there.
Well, I had assumed that it was they got into some sort of argument, and because they were both children, she didn't think about what she was doing. She didn't think through her actions, and she literally just picked up a rock and smashed it against her friend's head and killed her.
Yikes.
And I think that's all there really is to it, is that she was a kid and she wasn't thinking through what she was doing, and it was just like a tragedy basically, and I don't think there's any more to it than that.
Okay, so and I guess that explains why everyone just like looks at it and they're like, oh yeah, that's the bitch that fucking killed her friend and didn't go to jail for it. Because like, oh yeah. So I don't know, that they maybe, and that's I don't know, missed opportunity. Like this could have been like The Witch or Midsummer, something like that, where they just go fucking ham, in like and it dipped its toes in that direction, like I've alluded to, but they just didn't quite go hard enough into like making this movie more about that trauma, because I guess, I don't know, it's a little too subtle, maybe, and they didn't go maybe into the depths of her trauma enough. Her alien, I always was an alien, Matt. Everyone looked at me weird, like I just didn't buy that ending where she's like, oh, now I'm happy, but it's like, but I thought you pulled the creature out and killed it. Aren't you like? Shouldn't you be in horror at what you're seeing? like why? Like it just very, very discordant, and the connect, yeah.
Well, the way that I looked at it was, so yeah, if people don't know, basically the ending is she sort of, the aliens like read her memories, and they see that you know, she is shunned by her community. She accidentally killed her friend. She is like a, you know, a tragic story. Her life is just one big tragic story. And they decide to basically let her keep living in the small town while everybody else, all the other people are, you know, taken over by the alien parasite, but she is not. And she goes along with it. And yeah, I guess the very last scene is this weird sort of like 1950s like Pleasantville type like street dance in this small town, and she like looks directly at the camera and yeah, it's just very strange because that was my sort of what I took away from it, was that basically the aliens let her live because they realized that like she wouldn't give up the ghost, basically. Like she would be fine living there with them, and she wouldn't, you know, she wouldn't run off and like tell somebody, or she wouldn't, you know, I don't know, you don't really get clued into whether or not this is happening in like other parts of the world. I mean, we do see the sky with a bunch of UFOs in it at one point, but you know, our field of view only goes, you know, maybe 20 or 30 miles. So who knows if this is happening everywhere else, but yeah, it's very, very strange.
Yeah, she just turns into a collaborator so that she can have the perfect little, like, because that's the thing. Like, I was trying to like nail down how to describe this, and it's like, what if a trad wife incel at sea, you know, like your proprietor, killed an alien and didn't have the social skills to tell anybody? That's basically what this movie is. But that is like I know I've been a little bit, you know, critical and maybe a little harsh to it, but that belies how much I did enjoy watching it. You know, the like Cassandro, neat little genre piece. It doesn't quite succeed at everything it tries to do, but you know, by God, it's trying. But maybe next time, buddy, put a little more text into your project. Moving on to the mentionable. Let's see. What was yours this week? I know I slapped it all together, but I've already forgotten it.
Yeah, so mine is the Criterion Closet video with Hideo Kojima. And yeah, if people don't know, he comes from the world of video games, and typically with this series that the Criterion Collection does on YouTube, they put filmmakers into a closet with all of their movies in it, and they basically tell them, like, pick out a couple of your favorites and then just talk about them, essentially. And in this case, I think this is the first like video game related person that has done this ever. And so it's kind of unique in that perspective, because I'm sure that if Hideo Kojima had his way, he probably wishes that he was a director instead of a film director. And so this is a really great series overall. And this is a standout episode because Kojima picks really, really good films. You know, oftentimes if you watch a lot of these from this series, it gets a bit stale because people tend to pick the same movies. Like, I like Decalogue, and I like Seven Samurai, and I like Naked Lunch and The Seventh Seal. But Kojima sort of uses this platform to spotlight like great Japanese movies, and so all of his picks are Japanese. And you know, it's sort of he's digging deep. You know, he's digging deep with his picks, unlike a lot of people with this show. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this.
If there ever was a video game guy, it should be him. You know, his you know, games are some of the more quote unquote cinematic and reflexive, you know, bits of, you know, video gaming out there. It's one of the only times as a gamer where you don't actually feel in control, you know, over what is happening, is when you're playing one of his games. He's the puppet master looming over your shoulder being like, I knew you would do that. I've anticipated everything you've done. It's all part of the experience. You know, he's a psycho. It boggles the mind how many movies are in the collection at this point. Now that, like, when you see them all in a closet like that, it's quite the sight. My mentionable this week is kind of a tease to a future mentionable that's going to be coming, but the There was a guy on the subreddit for Cyberpunk 2077, the low sodium version, where people aren't supposed to bitch and complain. But he was like, hey guys, I bought this really awesome coffee table guidebook, this limited edition guidebook for Cyberpunk 2077 when the game came out in December 2020. And let me tell you, there's nothing I own that is more laughably irrelevant than this like giant fucking tome. Because famously, this game came out and really fucking face planted at launch. Even though I never had any of those bugs, and for some reason my ancient graphics card played this game wonderfully. And it wasn't until that they really began optimizing this game for other for like other systems that I had any issues playing this game, but I still put in 500 fucking hours before I moved on with my life. And now they've sucked me back in. They got Idris Elba and Phantom Liberty, but before they dropped Phantom Liberty, they were like, oh, by the way, here is the game we should have released 3 years ago. It has oodles of new features that should have been there, like better police chases, like better warrant system in general, better driving system in general. They've totally revamped how like items and crafting and abilities work. Like everything is different to such a degree that even though I could load up like some of my legacy saves and just like redo my skill tree, it would not be advisable. I don't think, just because like things are so radically different. Like in the old game, you looked like a fucking clown by the end because you were just looking for the best stats. And then they introduced like outfit things where you could keep like your stat armor on, but then wear a cool outfit that matched. And they've finally realized, no, people play this game like it's just like a doll simulator. And they want to be able to have the best, like looking things. So now armor has nothing to do with what pair of sunglasses you're wearing. And it's entirely just tied to, cyberware, and things like that. So they also recommend that you don't play this on a hard drive. I don't know if you're one of those poor souls still working with a spinning disc to play your games, because let me tell you, SSD and M.2 gaming is the way to go. It's butter quick. You don't have to worry about assets being loaded, but I still am trying to play Starfield, and I don't have room on my Steam Deck for both Starfield and Cyberpunk. So I've been playing it off of an SD card, and let me tell you, it still runs fine. But it is an alien experience. Like I feel like I am at hour zero on a game I put 500 hours into.
The thing that I think is fascinating about this 2.0 update is they made the game less of an RPG, which I think is fascinating. They basically have pivoted to being more of like an action type game where you no longer you have like unlimited grenades, and you don't have to worry about putting on all the clothes. And they're definitely pivoting in like an action direction with it, which I know some people don't like and some people do. I still haven't fired this up yet. I have it installed, but the Cyberpunk, just the base game with the ray tracing overdrive that they released, a couple months back, it's the first thing that I've thrown at my new graphics card that has actually like not been able to wasn't able to handle the overdrive. I was getting like sub 40 FPS with the ray tracing overdrive on. And so I really want to see what happens now with like the ray tracing 3.5 or whatever they released.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm happy having like 30 to 40 FPS on my Steam Deck. But I've never been an FPS guy, but I get it. Like once you get that, like all those extra, frames, you just can't go back, can you? Especially when things like when you have like your Sandevistan, like that's the thing. They totally revamped the way the Sandevistan works. So it is a lot more comparable to like what the characters in Cyberpunk Edgerunners were doing, apparently. But they've also like really worked hard at balancing the game. Because I played this game as a quick hack monster. I would just walk into a room stealthed and just infect one guy with contagion. But I also had I had suicide as well as contagion, so I could make one guy kill himself, and then it would spread to everyone around him. So I could just walk into buildings and just kill everyone. But now, when you use quick hacks, it makes it easier for them to find you. So so if you use a quick hack, and if they have a net runner, they start looking for you. So like the AI systems have gotten more, robust, and they are leaning more into the shooting aspect of it, but the immersion of like the way you interact with people and the choices, I don't know, like they've taken some of them away. Because do you remember Fingers? Yeah. So did you like punch him like during the story and lose out on being able to buy his gear?
I don't think so. No, I mean I was mostly I stayed away from like melee entirely in this game, so I was not going around doing stuff like that.
Because he has an early game double jump that's like to die for. And people used to be like, oh, I really want to fucking kill this guy, but I want to be able to buy his shit, because it's kind of expensive, if you're advancing the story too far. Yeah. And now instead you can buy all the cyberware and all the mods from every single vendor, no matter what. There's no unique place you have to go to find something. So yeah, they have taken the RPG grind out of this game and made it all about just the fluidity of its gameplay and its loop. Like, and fulfilling the quests, they've dumbed down looting. You no longer grab junk, and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a mixed bag, but I don't have the time. I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3. I'm playing Starfield. I'm dealing with this guy. I'm dealing with this little girl over here. So thank you for bearing with us today as we talked about Cassandro and No One Will Save You. Both worth checking out. Next week, we're going to be doing something a little different as we watch Wes Anderson's Roald Dahl extravaganza that's going to be on Netflix with all of his short films. So, hey, don't do that. We'll see you all next week, everybody. Take care.